The emergency lights painted the Galactic Assembly Station in shades of red and amber. Ambassador Yoon Minji stood at the observation window, watching the distant star system of Verath 9 die. The star pulsed with angry light, growing brighter with each passing hour. Somewhere in that chaos, 12,000 ships carried 4 billion Kelthany people away from their doomed home. Minji pressed her hand against the cold glass. She had seen the projections. The Kelthany would not make it out in time. Behind her, the assembly chamber buzzed with hundreds of voices. Representatives from across the galaxy argued and debated while people died. Minji turned away from the window and walked back to her seat. The human delegation was small, just 3 people in a room filled with thousands. Humanity was new to galactic politics. They did not have much power here. The Vraxian representative stood at the central podium. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights. He was speaking about resource allocation and strategic priorities. Minji felt sick listening to him. He talked about the Kelthani like they were numbers in a report, not living beings with families and dreams. The Kelthani chose to build their civilization around an unstable star, the Vraxian said. His voice echoed through the chamber. We cannot risk our military assets for poor planning. The Assembly's war fleets exist to protect member species, not to rescue non-members from natural disasters. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Minji saw representatives nodding. The Toll Confederacy delegate looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The Ilmari Coalition's ambassador stared at her datapad, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Minji stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. The sound cut through the murmurs. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at her. She walked to the podium, her heart pounding. The Vraxian stepped aside with a dismissive gesture. Honored representatives, Minji began. Her voice shook slightly. She steadied herself. I have heard many words today about strategy and resources. I have heard about acceptable losses and calculated risks, but I have not heard anyone talk about what is right. She pulled up a hologram. It showed the Kelthani evacuation fleet, 12,000 ships of all sizes and shapes fleeing through a field of debris. The wreckage of their orbital stations surrounded them like a deadly maze. Beyond that, the star's radiation expanded in waves of destruction. These are not numbers, Minji said. She pointed at the hologram. These are mothers and fathers. These are children. These are people who trusted that when they called for help, someone would answer. The human ambassador speaks with emotion, not logic, the Vraxian interrupted. Emotion does not change physics. Our civilian rescue ships cannot survive the radiation. Our military ships have the shields to enter that zone, but we will not risk them. Why not? Minji asked. The question hung in the air. Your ships are designed to fly into war zones. This is a rescue operation. Is saving lives not worth the risk? Our war fleets maintain galactic peace, the Ilmari ambassador said. She finally looked up from her datapad. If we damage them in rescue operations, who will protect us from real threats? Real threats? Minji felt anger burning in her chest. 4 billion people are about to die, and you call that not real? The chamber erupted in voices. Some supported Minji. Most did not. The assembly moderator called for order. Minji stood at the podium, surrounded by noise, feeling completely alone. The vote came quickly. The large displays showed the results in harsh white numbers. 127 species voted against intervention. Only 3 voted in favor. Humanity and 2 small civilizations that barely had voices in the assembly. Minji walked back to her seat in silence. Her assistant, a young man named Park Jin-ho, touched her shoulder gently. You did what you could, he whispered. It was not enough, Minji replied. The assembly moved on to other business. Trade agreements, border disputes. The mundane work of galactic government continued while the Kelthani died. Minji could not focus on any of it. She kept seeing those ships in her mind. 12,000 vessels, 4 billion lives. Her communications device vibrated. Minji looked down at it, surprised. The message was coded, using an old Earth military encryption. She decrypted it quickly, her hands shaking. The message was short. Humanity heard. We are already moving. Minji's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Park Jin-ho. He had received the same message. His eyes were wide. They would not, Park whispered. The 3rd Defense Fleet is 3 weeks away from Earth. That is our largest battle group. They would, Minji said. She felt something strange rising in her chest. Hope. They absolutely would. She looked around the assembly chamber. None of the other representatives knew. They continued their debates and political games. They had no idea that humanity had made a different choice. Minji pulled up her star charts. She calculated distances and jump times. If the 3rd Defense Fleet had left Earth the moment the Kelthani distress call went out, they could reach Varath 9 in 14 hours. The timing would be incredibly tight. The fleet would arrive just as the evacuation reached its most desperate moment. Should we tell the assembly? Park asked. Minji thought about it. She thought about the Vraxians' dismissive tone. She thought about the Ilmari ambassador refusing to look up. She thought about 127 species choosing politics over lives. No, Minji said. Let them be surprised. She returned her attention to the window. The dying star pulsed in the distance. Somewhere out there, human ships were racing through the darkness. Admiral Park Seo-jun commanded the 3rd Defense Fleet. Minji had met him once, years ago. He was a quiet man with steady eyes. He had told her that humanity joined the galactic community to make friends, not to watch them die. The assembly would call this a violation of protocols. They would say humanity overstepped its authority. They would be angry that such a young species ignored a direct vote. Minji smiled. She did not care about any of that. 14 hours from now, the galaxy would learn something important about humanity. They would learn that when humans heard someone calling for help, they answered. Politics and protocols and acceptable losses did not matter. What mattered was simple. People needed help. Humanity would give it. The star pulsed again, brighter than before. Minji watched and waited. 14 hours. That was all the time the Kelthani had left. That was all the time humanity needed. No one was supposed to arrive. The assembly had voted. The decision was final. But humanity had never been good at accepting the unacceptable. Captain Thala gripped the command rail of her ship. Her hands hurt from holding on so tight. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They had been running for 18 hours. Fear had given way to exhaustion. Exhaustion had given way to acceptance. The Hope's last measure was the largest ship in the Kelthani evacuation fleet. 500,000 people lived in its corridors and compartments. Thala could hear their prayers through the walls. The Kelthani believed their spirits would return to the stars when they died. Soon, they would all return home. Captain, her sensor officer said quietly, the radiation wave has accelerated again. Thala looked at the display. The numbers told a simple story. They had 4 hours of safe flight remaining. The nearest safe jump point was 6 hours away. Mathematics did not lie. Send the data to all ships, Thala said. They deserve to know. She thought about her daughter. Little Shayna was in the ship's emergency shelter, deep in the safest part of the hull. She was only 6 cycles old. She would die before she understood what death meant. That was probably a mercy. Captain, the sensor officer's voice cracked with surprise. I am detecting FTL signatures, multiple signatures, large ones. Thala's hearts began beating faster. How many? Hundreds. I count 340 separate emergence points. The sensor officer looked up from her console. Her face showed confusion and hope. Captain, someone is coming. But the assembly voted against intervention, Thala said. She felt dizzy. No one was supposed to arrive. The view screen changed. Space itself seemed to tear open. Hundreds of bright tears appeared in reality, and through each one came a ship. Thala had seen war fleets before. She knew what military vessels looked like. These were warships, sleek and dangerous, covered in weapons and armor. Identify them, Thala ordered. The sensor officer worked quickly. I am reading their identification codes now, Captain. They are human ships, the entire 3rd Defense Fleet of Earth. Thala stared at the screen. She knew about humans. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were the new species, barely 50 years in the galactic community. They were considered naive and idealistic. The major powers tolerated them, but did not take them seriously. Those naive idealists had just brought 340 warships to save people they had never met. A communication request flashed on Thala's console. She accepted it with shaking hands. A human face appeared on the screen. He was older, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. He wore a military uniform with Admiral's insignia. This is Admiral Park Seo-jun of the Earth Defense Force, commanding the 3rd Fleet, the human said. His voice was calm and steady. We received your distress call. We are here to get you out. All of you. Thala felt tears running down her face. Admiral, the Galactic Assembly voted against intervention. You violated their decision. Park smiled slightly. The Assembly votes on politics. We vote with our actions. Captain, we need your help to coordinate this evacuation. Can you organize your ships into groups of 50? Yes, Thala said. Yes, we can do that. Good. My tactical officer will send you our shield frequencies. We are going to create protected corridors through the debris field. Your ships will fly through them in groups. Our ships will take the radiation damage instead of yours. Thala understood what he was saying. The humans would position their warships between the Kelthani and the radiation. They would use their military-grade shields to absorb the deadly energy. Those shields were strong, but they were not invincible. The humans would suffer damage protecting strangers. Why? Thala asked. Why would you do this? Park looked surprised by the question. Because you need help, he said simply. Is there supposed to be another reason? The communication shifted to a tactical channel. Thala watched as human ships began moving into position. They arranged themselves with precise coordination. Each warship became a shield. Each formation became a safe passage. A new human appeared on Thala's screen. She was younger, with sharp eyes and quick movements. Captain Thala, I am Commander Lee Ha-yoon, tactical coordinator for this operation. I am sending you formation patterns now. We need your fastest ships in the first wave. They will help guide the slower vessels through the safe corridors. Thala worked quickly. She organized the 12,000 Kelthani ships into groups. It should have taken hours. Somehow, with the humans helping, it took only 30 minutes. The humans shared their coordination software freely. They gave the Kelthani access to their communication networks. There was no hesitation, no demand for payment or future favors. The first group of 50 Kelthani ships entered the corridor. Thala watched from her bridge as human warships surrounded them. The humans' shields glowed bright blue as they absorbed radiation meant for the civilian vessels. Thala saw the human ship's hull plating beginning to darken and blister. The damage was real, but the Kelthani ships passed through safely. Second group, prepare to move, Commander Lee said over the communication channel. Her voice remained calm and professional. Thala heard the strain underneath it. The human was scared too, but she did her job anyway. The evacuation began to work. Group after group of Kelthani ships moved through the protected corridors. The humans rotated their warships constantly. When one vessel's shields weakened from radiation exposure, another took its place. They worked like a living organism, each part supporting the whole. Thala allowed herself to hope. They might actually survive this. Then her sensor officer gasped. "Captain, new contacts. Vraxian warships dropping out of FTL. I count 180 vessels. They are moving into attack formation." The hope died in Thala's chest. She pulled up the tactical display. The Vraxian Empire had sent their own fleet, but they were not positioning to help with the rescue. They were positioning to stop it. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen again. He did not look worried. He looked determined. "Captain Thala, continue the evacuation. Do not stop for anything. My fleet will handle this." "Admiral, there are 180 Vraxian warships," Thala said. "You only have 340 ships, and they are all protecting us. If the Vraxians attack, you cannot defend yourselves." "Then the Vraxians will have to choose," Park said. "They can fire on us, which means firing through your civilian ships. Or they can stand down and let us work. Either way, we are not leaving." A new communication channel opened. A Vraxian voice filled Thala's bridge. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Kexthor of the Vraxian Imperial Fleet. You are in violation of Galactic Assembly decisions. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system or face consequences." Admiral Park replied calmly. "Admiral Kexthor, we are conducting a humanitarian rescue operation. We are not leaving until every Kelthani civilian is safe. You are welcome to help us, or you are welcome to stay out of our way. Those are your only two options." "You dare threaten the Vraxian Empire?" Kexthor's voice carried rage and disbelief. "We will destroy you." "No," Park said quietly. "You will not. Because to reach us, you have to go through 4 billion innocent people. And I do not think even the Vraxian Empire wants that on their conscience." Silence filled the communication channels. Thala watched the tactical display. The Vraxian ships moved closer. The human ships continued their rescue work, shields extended, protecting the Kelthani even while threatened with destruction. 3 small ships broke away from the distant assembly observation fleet. Thala identified them quickly. Toll Confederacy cruisers. They moved toward the human formation and slipped into position alongside the Earth vessels. A new voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral Park, this is Captain Drell of the Toll Confederacy. We are joining your rescue operation. The humans remind us what honor truly means." Admiral Park smiled. "Welcome to the party, Captain. We can use the help." Thala felt tears on her face again. 3 species now stood against the Vraxian threat. 3 species chose lives over politics, but the Vraxian fleet continued to advance. Their weapons charged. The countdown began. Admiral Park Seo-jun stood on the bridge of the indomitable Compassion and watched the Vraxian fleet approach. His officers worked quietly around him. They showed no panic. Good. Panic was contagious, and they could not afford it now. "Vraxian weapons are charging," Commander Lee Ha-yoon reported. "All 180 ships. They will be ready to fire in 40 minutes. Park nodded. He looked at the tactical display. His 340 ships were spread out in a protective formation around the Kelthani evacuation fleet. The human shields extended outward, creating corridors of safety. Those same shields made his ships vulnerable to attack. "Continue the evacuation," Park said. "Do not change our formation." "Sir," Lee said carefully, "if we maintain this formation when the Vraxians fire, we cannot defend ourselves effectively. Our shields are extended to protect the Kelthani ships. We are exposed." "I know," Park replied. He kept his voice calm. "That is exactly why the Vraxians will not fire." He hoped he was right. He thought about the choice facing the Vraxian admiral. To attack the human fleet, the Vraxians would have to fire through the space occupied by thousands of Kelthani civilian vessels. Even if their weapons were precise, some shots would miss. Some Kelthani would die. Park was betting that even the Vraxian Empire had limits to its cruelty. A communication request came from the Vraxian flagship. Park accepted it. Admiral Kexthor's face filled the screen. The Vraxian looked furious. His scales had darkened to almost black, a sign of extreme anger in his species. "Human, you are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," Kexthor said. "You position yourself to protect civilians while leaving yourself defenseless. Do you think this will stop me?" "I think you have a choice to make," Park said. "You can fire on us, which means killing Kelthani civilians, or you can stand down and let us work. What kind of admiral do you want to be remembered as?" Kexthor hissed, a sound like steam escaping. "You do not understand galactic politics. The Assembly made a decision. You violated it. There must be consequences." "There will be," Park agreed. "The consequence will be 4 billion people living instead of dying. I can accept that." "Your fleet will be destroyed," Kexthor said. "Is that worth the lives of non-member aliens?" Park felt anger flash through him. He controlled it carefully. "Every life is worth saving, Admiral, whether they are Assembly members or not, whether they are human or Kelthani or Vraxian. Every single one matters." He cut the communication. Lee looked at him with worry in her eyes. "Sir, the Vraxians are still approaching. 35 minutes until weapons range." "How many Kelthani have we evacuated?" Park asked. 2,800 ships, Lee replied. 9,200 still need to get through the corridors. Park did some quick math. At their current rate, they would need at least 8 more hours to evacuate everyone. The stellar radiation would kill them all in less than 6 hours. They were still going to lose people, unless they found another way. "Get me Lieutenant Choi Jae-sung," Park ordered. The young engineer appeared on a communications screen. He looked exhausted. He had been awake for 20 hours straight, managing the shield rotations. "Sir?" "Lieutenant, we need to cover more Kelthani ships with fewer human vessels," Park said. "Is there a way to extend our shield envelopes without losing defensive capability?" Choi thought for a moment. "Maybe. If we rotate the shield harmonics on a specific frequency, we could create overlapping fields. The shields would cover a larger area and they would still maintain enough strength to stop weapons fire." "How long to implement?" Park asked. 30 minutes, Choi said. "But sir, this is theoretical. I have never seen it done before. It might not work." "It will work," Park said firmly. "Make it happen." "Lieutenant." He turned to Lee. "Reorganize the fleet. I want maximum shield coverage with minimum vulnerability. Use Choi's overlapping field theory." Lee worked quickly, her hands flying across her console. The tactical display changed. Human ships shifted positions. The formation tightened and strengthened. Park watched as the overlapping shields created a moving fortress around the Kelthani vessels. "Sir, this is brilliant," Lee said with surprise. "We can cover twice as many ships and still maintain defensive strength. How did you know it would work?" "I did not," Park admitted, "but I trust our people to find solutions when we need them." The Vraxian fleet reached weapons range. Park felt tension fill the bridge. His officers stopped talking. Everyone watched the tactical display. The Vraxian ships held position. Their weapons remained charged, but not firing. Park allowed himself a small breath of relief. Kexthor was hesitating. That meant the Vraxian admiral was not completely willing to kill civilians. Then 3 more ships appeared on the display. Toll Confederacy cruisers had joined them earlier. Now more vessels were coming. Park enhanced the sensor image. He recognized the ship designs. Ilmari Coalition frigates. They moved into formation alongside the human and Toll vessels. A communication came from the lead Ilmari ship. "Admiral Park, this is Captain Yelm. We cannot watch this anymore. We are here to help." More ships appeared. Species Park did not even recognize. Small civilizations, with only a few vessels. They all came and joined the formation. The rescue fleet grew from 343 ships to 400. Then 500, then 600. Lee stared at her console in amazement. Sir, they are coming from everywhere. Species that barely have space travel. They are sending whatever they can. Park felt something tight in his chest loosen. This was what the galaxy could be. This was what it should be. Species working together to save lives instead of arguing about politics. Integrate them all into our shield network, Park ordered. Share our coordination software. Make them part of the team. The evacuation accelerated. With more ships creating more protected corridors, the Kelthani moved faster. Groups of 50 became groups of 100. The flow of refugees increased. On the tactical display, Park watched the Vraxian fleet. They had not moved in 20 minutes. Kex-Thor's ships held their position, weapons charged, but they did not advance. A new communication came from the Vraxian flagship. Kex-Thor appeared on the screen again. His scales had returned to their normal color. He looked tired. "Human Admiral," Kex-Thor said quietly, "I cannot fire on this. I will not fire on this." "Then help us," Park said. "Your ships have powerful shields. We need every vessel we can get." Kex-Thor was silent for a long moment. Park could see the internal struggle on the Vraxian's face. Duty versus conscience. Orders versus morality. "The Empire will punish me for this," Kex-Thor finally said. "Probably," Park agreed. "But you will be able to sleep at night." Kex-Thor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Vraxian fleet, join the rescue formation. All ships, extend shields and follow human coordination protocols." 180 Vraxian warships moved to join the rescue operation. The combined fleet now numbered over 700 vessels. Together, they created an enormous shield network. The Kelthani ships began moving through the corridors in groups of 200. "New problem," Lee said urgently. "Sir, the stellar shockwave just accelerated again. We have 6 hours instead of 12. Park looked at the updated projections. Even with the expanded fleet, they would not make it. They would save most of the Kelthani, maybe 3 billion, but over 1 billion would still die. He refused to accept that. There had to be another way. "Get me Lieutenant Choi again," Park ordered, "and get me Captain Thala. We need to think faster." The young engineer and the Kelthani captain both appeared on split screens. Park looked at them both. "We have 6 hours to move 12,000 ships. We need a solution that breaks the rules. Give me your craziest ideas." Choi spoke first. "What if we do not move the ships? What if we move the space around them?" "Explain," Park said. "FTL jump beacons," Choi said excitedly. "If we create a network of beacons, we can pull ships through jump space even if they do not have the power to jump themselves." "That would require an enormous amount of power," Thala said. "More than all our ships combined could generate." Choi smiled. "What if we used emergency power cores? Each human ship has 3 backup cores designed for catastrophic failure scenarios. If we pull those cores and link them together," Park understood immediately, "we create a jump net. But, Lieutenant, removing emergency cores means those ships cannot function independently anymore. They would need to be towed home." "Yes, sir," Choi said. 90 ships would be permanently disabled, but 4 billion people would live." Park thought about 90 ships. He thought about the crews who would volunteer. He thought about 4 billion lives. It was not even a difficult choice. Commander Lee Ha-yoon listened to Lieutenant Choi's plan and felt her stomach drop. 90 ships, 90 crews. They would have to strip out the emergency power cores from 90 vessels, leaving those ships unable to move on their own. The crews would need rescue themselves. "Sir," Lee said carefully, "removing emergency power cores violates every safety protocol we have. If something goes wrong during the jump, those ships will be helpless." "I know," Admiral Park replied. He stood straight on the bridge, his face calm. "Send out a fleet-wide request for volunteers. Explain exactly what we are asking. Let the crews decide." Lee sent the message. She explained the plan clearly. 90 ships would donate their emergency power cores. Those cores would create a jump network large enough to pull all 12,000 Kelthani vessels through FTL space at once, but the 90 human ships would be dead in space afterward. They would need other vessels to tow them home. The responses came back in seconds. Every single ship in the fleet volunteered. All 340 captains requested the honor of giving up their cores. Lee had to organize a lottery. She chose 90 ships at random because there was no other fair way to do it. The selected crews cheered. The ones not selected complained bitterly about being left out. Admiral Park watched this happen with an expression Lee could not read. "They are arguing about who gets to sacrifice their ships," he said quietly. "Yes, sir," Lee replied. "That is who we are." Park nodded. "Coordinate with Lieutenant Choi. I want those cores removed and positioned within 3 hours. And Lee?" "Sir." "Make sure the Vraxian Admiral sees this. I want him to understand what he joined today." Lee pulled up a communication channel to the Vraxian flagship. Admiral Kexthor appeared on screen. The Vraxian had been watching the human fleet's communications. He already knew about the plan. "You are disabling 90 warships to save civilians from a species you met today," Kexthor said. His voice carried disbelief. "This makes no strategic sense." "Strategy is not always about ships and weapons," Park replied. "Sometimes it is about showing the galaxy who you are." Lee watched as Kexthor sat back in his command chair. The Vraxian was silent for a long moment. "I commanded fleets for 40 years. He finally said. "I fought in 3 wars. I won 17 major battles, but I never did anything that mattered like this." "You are doing it now," Park said simply. Engineering teams worked frantically across 90 human ships. They cut through safety locks and disabled fail-safes. Emergency power cores were designed to stay with their ships. Removing them required breaking the vessels in fundamental ways. Lieutenant Choi coordinated from the indomitable Compassion, managing hundreds of engineers across the fleet. Lee watched him work. The young man had not slept in over 24 hours. His hands shook from exhaustion and stimulants, but his mind remained sharp. "Core removal complete on Ship 73, an engineer reported. "Moving to position." One by one, the cores came online in their new formation. They created a massive network of linked power sources. Choi routed them through navigation computers borrowed from Kelthani ships. The Kelthani had never seen this technology used this way. Neither had the humans. They were inventing it together. Captain Thala worked alongside Choi, her Kelthani technical knowledge filling gaps in human understanding. Lee watched them collaborate. They had known each other for less than 6 hours, but they worked like a team that had trained together for years. "Network is stable," Choi reported. "We have enough power. I think this will actually work." "You think?" Lee asked. Choi grinned tiredly. "Commander, we are doing something that has never been done before. Think is the best I can give you." Lee smiled, despite her worry. "Think is good enough, Lieutenant." The stellar shockwave continued to expand. They had 4 hours remaining. The jump network needed 2 more hours to reach full power. It would be close. Everything about this rescue had been close. "New contact," a sensor officer called out. "Single ship, human design, designation, Steadfast Guardian. They are experiencing critical systems failure." Lee pulled up the data. The Steadfast Guardian was a destroyer that had taken heavy radiation damage while protecting a group of slower Kelthani cargo haulers. Their shields had collapsed. Their engines were failing. The ship was drifting toward the stellar shockwave. "How many crew?" Admiral Park asked. 340, Lee replied. Park was silent for a moment. Lee knew what he was thinking. They could not risk the entire evacuation to save one ship. The math was brutal. 340 lives versus 4 billion lives. It was not even a choice, but it still hurt. Steadfast Guardian, this is Admiral Park, he said over the communication channel. Report status. Captain Kim Sun-woo appeared on screen. She was young, maybe 30 years old. Her uniform was torn and burned. Behind her, Lee could see smoke filling the bridge. Admiral, our main systems are down, Kim reported calmly. We cannot jump with the evacuation fleet. Our reactor is failing. We have maybe an hour before we lose life support. Hold position as long as you can, Park ordered. We will come back for you. Sir, with respect, no, you will not, Kim said firmly. We knew the risks when we volunteered for this mission. You have 4 billion people to save. Do not waste time on 340. Captain, Park started. Admiral, that is an order from me to you, Kim said with a slight smile. Save them all. We will buy you time. Guardian, out. The communication cut. Lee watched on the tactical display as the crippled destroyer used its last power to extend its shields. They were reinforcing the final evacuation corridor, protecting the slowest Kelthani ships with the last energy they had. Lee felt tears on her face. She wiped them away quickly. Time to jump network activation? Park asked. His voice was rough. 1 hour 50 minutes, Choi replied quietly. They continued working. The network charged. 90 disabled ships hung in space, their power cores forming a web of energy. Thousands of Kelthani vessels clustered together, preparing for a jump they could not make alone, and one human destroyer drifted slowly toward death, still protecting others with its final breath. Then something changed. Lee saw movement on her tactical display. 30 Kelthani cargo haulers broke formation. They turned away from the evacuation corridor. They headed back toward the Steadfast Guardian. What are they doing? An officer asked. Lee enhanced the image. She saw Captain Thala's ship leading them. The Hope's Last Measure and 29 other cargo vessels all heading back into danger. A communication came from Thala. Admiral Park, we are retrieving the Steadfast Guardian. You taught us that numbers on screens are people who matter. We will not leave our saviors behind. Captain, your shields cannot handle the radiation, Park protested. You will die trying. Then we die as humans would die, Thala replied. Protecting others. Is that not what this whole day has been about? Lee watched as the Kelthani ships surrounded the Steadfast Guardian. They had minimal shields. They were cargo haulers, not warships, but they extended what protection they had. They locked tractor beams onto the crippled destroyer, and they began pulling it toward safety. All ships, Admiral Park ordered. Maximum shields to cover the Kelthani rescue team. Pull power from weapons, life support, anything that is not essential. Cover them. The human fleet responded instantly. Every ship redirected power to their shield generators. The protective envelope expanded, reaching out to encompass both the Kelthani rescuers and the Steadfast Guardian they were saving. Vraxian ships added their shields. Toll vessels joined. The Ilmari and all the small civilizations that had volunteered contributed their power. 700 ships created a shield network so powerful it pushed back against the stellar radiation itself. The Kelthani haulers dragged the Steadfast Guardian forward, slowly. So slowly. Lee watched the countdown timer. They had 40 minutes before the jump network activated. The Guardian was 35 minutes away from the safe zone at current speed. It would be close. Everything today had been close. Jump network at full power, Choi reported. We are ready to activate on your order, Admiral. Park watched the display. The Guardian was still 5 minutes away from safety. If they jumped now, the destroyer and its Kelthani rescuers would be left behind. Hold, Park ordered. Sir, we are cutting this very close, Lee said. I know, Park replied. We hold. 5 minutes became 4. The stellar radiation intensified. Shields across the fleet began failing. Hull plating on dozens of ships burned and buckled. Still they held position. 3 minutes, 2 minutes. The steadfast Guardian crossed into the safe zone. The Kelthani haulers released their tractor beams and scattered to their assigned positions. "All ships prepare for jump," Admiral Park ordered. "Lieutenant Choi, activate the network." "Network activating," Choi said. "All cores linked. All ships connected. Initiating jump in 3, 2, 1. Space folded. 12,000 Kelthani ships vanished into FTL. 90 disabled human vessels jumped with them, powered by their sacrificed cores. 700 warships from a dozen species followed. The dying star pulsed one final time and exploded. The evacuation fleet emerged from FTL space in the refuge sector, a neutral zone 50 light-years from the dying Varath system. Commander Lee Ha-yoon ran immediate damage reports. She expected casualties. She had watched shields failing in those final moments before the jump. "Casualty report," Admiral Park ordered. Lee checked the data 3 times to be sure. "Sir, we lost 3 Kelthani cargo ships. They suffered reactor failures during the jump. Total casualties are 8,200 Kelthani civilians." She paused. 4 billion survived. The bridge was silent. 8,000 dead felt like a massive failure. 4 billion saved felt like a miracle. Both things were true at the same time. "And our fleet?" Park asked quietly. 90 ships disabled as planned, currently being towed by fleet vessels. The steadfast Guardian is badly damaged but intact. All crew survived. We have hull damage on 200 ships. 14 vessels need major repairs. But, sir, we did not lose a single human life." Park sat down heavily in his command chair. He looked exhausted. "Send my compliments to all crew. Tell them they did something remarkable today." Captain Thala's face appeared on the communication screen. Behind her, Lee could see the Kelthani bridge crew crying with joy and relief. "Admiral Park, I do not have words to thank you. My people are alive because of you." "Your people are alive because 700 ships from a dozen species chose to help," Park corrected gently, including 30 Kelthani cargo haulers who risked everything to save the steadfast Guardian. "You taught me something today, Captain. You taught me that courage is contagious." Lee watched as more communication requests flooded in. Kelthani ship captains wanting to thank the rescue fleet. Human crew members checking on friends. Vraxian officers coordinating towing operations for disabled vessels. The Toll and Ilmari making sure the refugee fleet had food and medical supplies. Strangers had become allies. Allies had become friends. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority communication from the Galactic Assembly Station," a communications officer reported. "Multiple ambassadors requesting immediate contact." Park smiled slightly. "I bet they are. Put them through." The screen changed to show the Assembly's main chamber. It was chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. The moderator was trying and failing to restore order. Ambassador Yoon Min-ji stood at the human delegation's seats, looking tired but triumphant. The Vraxian representative, who had spoken against intervention earlier, stood at the central podium. His scales had turned pale gray, a sign of shame in his culture. The human fleet violated direct assembly orders. They deployed military assets without authorization. They endangered galactic stability with their reckless... "They saved 4 billion lives," a voice interrupted. Admiral Kexthor appeared on a communication screen visible to the entire assembly. "While we debated and calculated and protected our political positions, the humans acted. I am Vraxian. I commanded the fleet sent to stop them, and I stand here now ashamed of the orders I followed and proud of the orders I disobeyed." The chamber fell silent. A Vraxian admiral publicly contradicting his own government was unheard of. "I submitted my resignation this morning," Kexthor continued. "I am requesting transfer to humanitarian service. I have spent 40 years fighting wars. I would like to spend whatever time I have left saving lives instead." The humans taught me that this is what strength really means." More voices joined in. The Toll representative stood and spoke about honor and duty. The Ilmari ambassador talked about the shame of watching others act while she remained safe. Representatives from small civilizations spoke about finally seeing what the assembly could be instead of what it was. The Vraxian representative tried to regain control. "This does not change the fact that humans violated..." "Violated what?" Yun Minji stepped forward. Her voice cut through the chamber. "Violated the decision to let people die? Violated the rule that says politics matter more than lives? You are right. We violated those things. We will violate them again. Every single time someone needs help and you choose to debate instead of act, humanity will violate your precious protocols." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from hundreds of species. "You invited us to join the galactic community. You told us about your values and your civilization. But when the moment came to live those values, you voted to let billions die. So yes, we acted without your permission. We will do it again. Because if this is what being a good galactic citizen means, then humanity chooses to be bad at it." The chamber erupted again. Some representatives shouted in anger, others in support. Lee watched Minji stand her ground, small and defiant against an entire galaxy. "I like her," Park said with a smile. "Lee, prepare casualty reports and damage assessments for the assembly. Make them detailed. I want every species to see exactly what their decision cost." "Yes, sir." The communication shifted to show multiple screens. Kelthani refugees were being processed at emergency stations across the refuge sector. Medical teams treated the injured. Food distribution centers fed the hungry. And everywhere, Lee saw different species working together. Humans and Vraxians coordinated logistics. Toll and Ilmari set up temporary shelters. Even species that had barely spoken to each other before the crisis now worked side by side. Captain Thala appeared on another screen. She was standing in what looked like a massive refugee camp. Kelthani children played in the background. "Admiral, my people would like to do something for yours. We have very little left. We lost our world, but we have our lives and our gratitude." "How can we repay you?" Park thought for a moment. "Captain, humanity does not need repayment, but the galaxy needs something. It needs people who remember that helping others matters more than politics. Can you teach that? Can you show other species what you learned today?" Thala stood straighter. "Admiral, the Kelthani will never forget this day. We will become helpers, not victims. Everywhere we go, we will carry this lesson. When someone needs aid, we will remember that humans crossed the galaxy to save strangers, and we will do the same." "Then that is payment enough," Park said. Over the next days, the refugee fleet integrated into the refuge sector. The Kelthani began rebuilding their lives. They had no homeworld, but they had each other and a future. Human engineers worked with Kelthani technicians to repair damaged ships. Vraxian supply vessels brought food and medicine. The Toll Confederacy offered settlement rights on 3 of their outer colonies. Lieutenant Choi received a commendation for his jump network innovation. He looked embarrassed by the attention. "I just did the math," he insisted. "Anyone could have figured it out." "But you did figure it out," Lee told him. "That is what matters." The 90 disabled ships were slowly towed back toward human space. Their crews were treated as heroes. They had sacrificed their vessels to save billions. Earth was already building replacements. Captain Kim Sun-woo of the Steadfast Guardian met with Captain Thala in person. The 2 captains embraced. "You came back for us," Kim said, tears in her eyes. "You came for us first," Thala replied. "We simply learned from the best teachers." The Galactic Assembly remained divided. Some species praised humanity's actions, others condemned them. The debates would continue for months. New regulations would be proposed. Committees would be formed. But something had changed. Representatives could no longer pretend that politics mattered more than lives. They had seen an alternative. They had watched humanity and its allies choose action over debate. Some would resist that lesson. Others would embrace it. Admiral Park returned to Earth to face questions from human leadership. They asked if he understood the diplomatic complications he had created. They asked if he knew the risks he had taken. They asked if he had any regrets. Park thought about 4 billion Kelthani alive and safe. He thought about Commander Lee coordinating the rescue. He thought about Lieutenant Choi solving impossible problems. He thought about Captain Kim and her crew buying time with their lives. He thought about Captain Thala and her people coming back to save their saviors. "No," Park said simply. "I have no regrets." On the refuge sector station, Kelthani children played in gardens built by toll engineers. Human teachers helped Kelthani students learn new languages. Vraxian doctors treated Kelthani patients. Ilmari merchants negotiated fair prices for supplies. Ambassador Yoon Minji walked through the refugee camps. Kelthani families stopped her constantly to say thank you. Children brought her flowers. Elderly Kelthani touched her hands in blessing. "Ambassador," a young Kelthani girl asked, "why did the humans save us?" "We are not important." Minji knelt down to the child's level. "You are important because you are alive. That is the only reason anyone needs. The humans did not come because of politics or strategy. We came because you needed help." The girl thought about this. "When I grow up, I want to be like humans. I want to help people." "Then you will be exactly like us," Minji said with a smile, "because that is what we hope the galaxy becomes. Full of people who help each other." The girl ran off to play. Minji watched her go. Around the camps, she saw the future taking shape. Kelthani would not forget this day. Neither would the Vraxians who helped, or the Toll, or the Ilmari, or any of the small species that had sent their few ships to join the rescue. The galaxy had learned something important. When humans heard someone calling for help, they answered, not with debates or committees or political calculations. They answered with action. No one was supposed to arrive when the Kelthani called for help. The assembly had voted. The decision was final. But humanity had never been good at accepting the unacceptable. They had come anyway, and they had shown the galaxy what it could be instead of what it was. 4 billion lives continued because humans believed that every life mattered. That belief was spreading now, carried by those who had been saved and those who had helped save them. The galaxy would never be quite the same. And that, Minji thought as she watched Kelthani children playing with human flowers, was exactly how it should be.